WBBL 11 is underway, and what a start it's been for the defending champions. 2 wins from 2 matches for the Renegades.
And the Melbourne Renegades make it 2 from 2. They will go to the top of the table for now.
Well, it's a different story for the teaming lime green.
Speaking of power, not enough of it.
Atupatu stares at her stump, stares at the pitch.
Kirby Short joins us at the desk to look at all the action. This is The Surge. Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of The Surge. I'm Adam White and it's great to be joined by Kirby Short back at the desk for another season. Kirby, welcome.
Thank you, Whitey. Great to be here again.
It's a bit of a different role for you now because you're a commentator. You're also head of women's cricket at Cricket Victoria. I saw you in a Renegades tracksuit top the other night. You're kind of doing everything.
And a star's the one before that. Don't leave that out because I'll be in strife back at work. No, it's I was driving here today thinking, goodness me, how the world changes inside 12 months, driving here as a local rather than flying in and catching an Uber. So it's been a bit of a ride, not probably where I expected to be, but loving every minute so far.
So have you enjoyed it? So we're going from someone that has been a premiership captain for the team in teal to now being in a managerial role in Melbourne. I won't say Cricket Victoria because it is Cricket Victoria, but it's also obviously for the Stars and the Renegades. It's very different.
It certainly is. I think there's a nice combination of experiences professionally for me that sit in this role. I think I was in a leadership role in a high school and there's some real similarities in terms of structurally and day-to-day what that looks like and the skill set that you lean on for that. And then there's a genuine affection and passion for the game of cricket. So I think it's kind of nice to be able to apply consultancy skills and educational leadership-based skills to a context that is about high performance in a sport that I really love. So it kind of just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how do you find it from being a captain of a team or just an active participant to being someone that's sitting in the dugout with zero control with what's going on in the game?
Tell you what, game day looks a little bit different these days, much more relaxing. As much as you're invested in the results and you've seen all the work the girls do across the week and you're sort of really barracking for them to have a good day, there's a level of empathy that goes into that when you know as an athlete what that looks like, as a cricketer what that looks like. So it's actually weirdly more relaxing on game day because I feel like everything that I can do has been done to that point. And it's nice when you don't have a microphone in your hand either because you can genuinely just sit back and enjoy the cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. So to the cricket, so we've got a big show coming up. Chinelle Henry will be our special guest. But just in relation to it all started really quickly. 3 games on the first day. One was rain affected. Had a bit of an issue with the rain also down in Melbourne. But generally speaking, what's been your initial impression?
I was excited by so many of the lists in this competition. I think I didn't necessarily expect to be sitting here saying the Renegades have won their first 2. I think the loss of Hayley Matthews was pretty significant for them in the context of how they went last year. So they'll be wrapped with that start. I was excited by the Hurricanes list and the depth that they have, and they've lived up to that hype in that first match, running down a record score of 180 at AB Field. So I think when you start looking around the competition, the Sixers, long trip to Perth, which they don't often make, they have always had a star-studded list and haven't necessarily put the performances together, but have started really strong on the road. And then you've got the Thunder, who I must say I looked at their list and went, that's a finals team. And we know that on paper compared to reality counts for not a whole lot in sport, particularly cricket. I didn't think that they'd be 0-2. So we're in a really interesting position where some have lived up to hype, some maybe have underperformed. And I kind of like sitting at this stage of the season going, well, now the paper counts for nothing. We're underway in the competition and I can't wait to see what stories we're telling in a couple of weeks' time and what surprises await.
Absolutely. Well, we're certainly underway with the latest edition of The Surge as well. So let's get into the power play and we'll start with the Sydney Sixers, who had very much a statement to make at the Wacker.
And I think for us to be able to kick off our Big Bash campaign against the Sixers, which doesn't happen too often, it's nice for the Sixers to finally make their way over to Perth. Let's be honest, no one likes Sydney, so I don't think you need too much more motivation to come out here. Yeah, well, we saw obviously Alyssa Healy didn't want to make the trip over, which is unfortunate. We know, I guess, the threat she is. I've heard reports that it was a broken thumbnail or something like that, so that's a bit unfortunate. I hope you full recovery from that. When you've got the likes of Ash Gardner, Elise Perry, Amelia Kerr, I could go on, but I don't want to give them any more airtime.
Famous Perth Scorchers crowd, silent here at the Wacker. Oh, great catch! You beauty! Kiva Bray says, I can't get in the game, so I better take a specky at the whacker. What a way to end.
So there you go. Sophie Devine certainly set up the match. Well, like a boxing promoter than a cricketer. It was good to see. They didn't back it up, and the Sixers, they had the final say.
They certainly did. And to be fair, it's well-founded, Soph's commentary. She was a guest of the show last season as well off that World Cup win, if I recall correctly, Whitey. And we found out in that episode she's pretty happy to lay it down. Slightly awkward when you lay it down and you don't back it up with an on-field performance, but so be it. I think it was the skipper, wasn't it? The new skipper, Sixers, Ash Gardner, and she was absolutely dominant, set the game up for her team really, 5-4, and then a really wonderful opening partnership from the number one draft pick as well in Sophia Dunkley.
Yeah, that's right. They certainly did make a statement. It wasn't the statement from Sophie Devine we're talking about. It was actually what the Sixers did on the field. I want to start with Ash Gardner and the role of her as captain. We spoke to Nicole Faltum about this last week. Sometimes players just prosper, flourish when they're given the captaincy. I know it's a very small sample size, but I thought that was quite significant what she was able to do.
Certainly was. I think Phoebe Litchfield was the example last season, her best run scoring season in the WBBL, and it was her first year as skipper. So another example of a classy leader who didn't need a badge. Likewise with Ash Gardner, I think the title is irrelevant. It's about behaviours. And I think if you watch Ash Gardner's evolution, I suppose, as a cricketer, particularly in terms of her cricket IQ, willingness to talk about the game, her own plans, her team's plans, you can see the contribution she's been making on the field for the Sixers, particularly in the absence of an Elisa Healy for the last couple of WBBLs as well. So I think from that perspective, not that surprising that she's slotted into that role quite comfortably. I imagine some challenging decisions around the Sixers boardroom table around, well, what's the right balance and what are the right roles for us right now? And how wonderful for Ash to be able to be in that role, have support around her, and then clearly reflected in a take responsibility type of performance from the skipper with the ball too.
So I'm interested, Kirby, from your point of view, it's that 50-50 sort of thing from an all-rounder. You know, what's a true 50-50? Because usually it's a batting all-rounder or a bowling all-rounder. But with Ash, we think of her more for her power hitting and the way she can take a game away from an opposition with the bat. But with this performance with the ball and the consistency she continually does with the ball, is she one of those almost 50-50 kind of players?
It's been swings and roundabouts with her 50-50 split, I think, and maybe it's more reliant on opportunity than it is with what actually is the dominant skill set. Yep. So I think you're right. We have seen in the shorter formats in particular that absolute dominance, that power. I can just see ball after ball flying into the grandstand at North Sydney Oval on how many iterations of WBBL across the years. Equally, if you think about her Australian performances, particularly 50-over Test match cricket, the Ashes in England a few years ago, where she's dominated with the ball. And I think it's really just been about what is her primary role in which team, in which format, and such is the quality and evolution of her game that it's really difficult to say she's one or the other because she tends to just step into the moment whenever it's required for her team, be that Australia or the Sixers.
I think it's a good point. And then you can say that whether it's bat or ball, she just seems to be someone that can sense the moment so well.
Yeah, definitely. And comes from experience, comes from, like we just mentioned, that evolution in her IQ, her willingness to understand the game, understand her game, and then be able to produce what's required in those moments. I think that's a key part of identifying and then performing in moments is knowing what you need to do within them. And I think that's been her evolution across the last couple of years, and no surprises now that she feels equipped and the Sixers feel she's equipped to contribute in that formal leadership role.
All right, as we continue the power play, let's go across to the Renegades now. As you said, they've started the season particularly well with 2 wins, and it's been a bit of a surprise because they haven't got Hayley Matthews, but they also don't have Sophie Molyneux from a leadership point of view. And you could almost say that Hayley falls into that same category as well. She hasn't Georgia Wareham stood up. Leadership, but also wickets and then runs, particularly in that game against the Thunder.
Yeah, 3 for in the first game, 2 for in the second game, 58 off 32 or something outrageous against the Thunder. So interestingly, I think there was one session she had with the team between turning around from a World Cup where she didn't play that much cricket. It's a long tour in India, 7 or 8 weeks if you throw in those 3 games that they played against India leading into the World Cup. So when you think that she's been on the road in that fashion and doing a lot of training, probably not as much playing given how wonderful Alana King was during that campaign, and then you come back, try and settle into remember what life is like back in Australia, back in Melbourne, you realise that Soph, your normal skipper's out, and that means I've got to step into that void. And she's such a relaxed character, Georgia Wareham. She just is the most unflappable cricketer I might have ever encountered. And I think her willingness to own the opportunity when asked by Simon Helmut, and he was really clear that that's who he wanted in that leadership role. There are a lot of wonderful leaders in that squad. Nick Faltum's done a wonderful job for Cricket Victoria, and Courtney Webb led the Renegades at the Spring Challenge. So spoilt for choice in terms of what they wanted that to look like. Georgia Wareham was the head coach's pick, and one day turn around, acquaint herself with the team, roll in, and then I think it's the composure that's really struck me about her first two performances this season. I think game one, it pretty much drizzled the whole way through that game in Brisbane, and she was the bowler that identified it's skidding on. This is the pace I need to bowl, keep the stumps in play, and took 3 really important wickets for her team, as well as in a tricky little run chase there, only chasing 66 from 8 overs, the Renegades, but her and Courtney Webb played a really important role in putting that chase together after they lost a few early wickets. And then the Thunder, she just absolutely boshed them. Again, it's that what's required of me and that genuine all-round role. So she's been outstanding.
It can't be underestimated the significance of her, as you just said, considering what she has done over the last couple of months, where living away from home, in hotels, not playing much cricket, bowling a lot in the nets, and being a support act to all of a sudden not just play but captain and have to dominate for your team. Full credit to her.
Not to mention a really sharp catch. She took it and took in the rain to take that first wicket as well. And it's really easy to underestimate the toll that those sorts of tours take.
That's right.
And having encountered so many of those Australian players having popped out the other side of that World Cup and not shying away from the fact that the result wasn't what they wanted either. So not only is it a grueling tour in India to begin with, it's really long. A 50-over World Cup has so many complexities to it. Plus they were eliminated in a semi-final, which no one would have predicted. So put all of that together, and then you've got to try and find a way to get rid of the jet lag, physically prepare yourself, re-engage with a new team, and then add on top of that, in Georgia Wareham's case, a captaincy responsibility too. So you can't say enough about how challenging that would have been mentally and physically. And for her to then produce those all-round performances that she has and make all of the decisions from a leadership perspective, wonderful.
Yep, spot on. Couldn't agree with you more. And that is the Renegades and Georgia Wareham. Now moving across to the Thunder, and this is a bit of a setback for me because I picked the Thunder to be the champions only a week ago before the tournament started. Are they in trouble, or is it just a bit of a speed bump? 0-2.
I'm going to say a speed bump. I think they've also got Heather Knight for this whole campaign, which they didn't last year as well. So, I mean, if you ask the Renegades last year, they lost their first 2 and then found a way to make it to the final and win it. So I think the baby can go out with the bathwater really quickly and you can get yourself into a little bit of strife, or with the composure that sits in that group and Lisa Kitely at the helm, Belinda Clark's been involved in that team from a leadership and culture perspective as well. So if there's a team in this competition that are well equipped to ride that initial speed bump, it's certainly the Thunder. I was with you, Whitey. I had them in my finals 4. I think it's pretty tricky to predict a winner in these sorts of competitions. But if you're talking a top 4 based on a list, you had to be pretty excited about them. I think some of the challenges that they've got to solve is their tempo across the 20 overs. I think there's some remarkable performers in that lineup when you start to roll through names like Vol, Shamari Adepadu, Heather Knight. They've added Laura Harris. Talia Wilson's back up the top. There's so much capacity there. I think it's about optimising and clarifying those roles so they can really make use of that list. I like Laura Harris at the back end of the innings she strikes somewhere near 200 last season in that phase of the game, whereas Heather Knight, which you might not expect, her strike rate during the power play is actually higher. The surge is higher than Laura Harris's. So they've got the right ingredients. I just don't think they've quite put it together yet from a batting perspective. And bowling-wise, there's just a little bit of an inexperience, particularly in their spin bowling stocks. You could make the assumption now that Georgia Vol may well bowl a few more overs than she has before, and Victorian Hazrat Gill, everyone's pretty excited about what she can be. She's also learning her craft at the highest level in this competition. So she will not shy away from that challenge. We know that to be true,
Absolutely.
but there's certainly some learning for her to do and some harsh lessons taught to her in that first game. You don't have to get it too far wrong to get punished at this level. So I think there's some things for them to work through in terms of how they play their roles with the bat. It's clear what their roles are. They just need to piece it together. And I think who is going to be the bowler for them that steps up so they can get themselves win in that first column so they're not 0-2 for too much longer.
This might sound a silly thing to say, but sometimes it's good to have these issues really early in the tournament. Yes, you go 0-2, but you've got enough time to work through it.
Yeah.
Rather than happening sometimes in the middle of the tournament when you're not expecting it and you haven't got enough time to get the momentum back but also solve the problems.
Yeah, definitely. So well put. And I think that's where that calmness and composure sits to go, all right, are we actually on the right track and we just haven't quite executed? Do we think we've got the roles right? In which case it just becomes a putting it together thing as opposed to worrying that all this change needs to happen because 10 games isn't very long to make those changes. So it's almost, no, we had this formula. We can trust the formula. Trent Copeland manages that list and he's so considered alongside Lisa Keightley as the head coach in terms of how they've constructed that group. So, and knowing that you've got the likes of a Heather Knight, the out-and-out talent and leadership capacity of Phoebe Litchfield. There's so much to like about that list, which is why we had them in the finals and still very well could be.
Yep, I'm not giving up on them quite yet. What about the team in purple? What they did on the weekend, an incredible partnership between Wyatt Hodge and Kara, club record 143. It was done awfully quickly and probably unexpectedly in a lot of ways, considering the way the game was set up there at one point.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what's so exciting about that list. They're just oozing batting talent. When you have Lizelle Lee cross over from an international to a local player, essentially you gain a whole nother international on your books without officially having one.
Yep.
So you've got her opening the batting. Danny Wyatt Hodge, we saw what she can do, busted out 90 from 52 at Allan Border Field in that what ended up being a unbelievably comfortable chase for them. Then Nat Siva-Brunt, who's arguably the best player in the world. She can go big. She didn't the other night. Lizelle Lee didn't either, but Danny Wyatt Hodge did. And then it allows Nick Carey to play precisely the role that you would like for her to play, where blink and you miss it. She's 50 not out. She's finished the game for her team. She's probably striking at 130 or 140, but all of the other crash and bash is happening around her. So we haven't then even talked about Elise Villani or Heather Graham or Rachel Treneman. Their lineup is absurd. So on paper, they looked good. In reality, they looked as good, if not better. And you can see the list that they have constructed and the motivation there. So, yeah, that one's really exciting.
What a bonus, though, that it wasn't necessarily the obvious candidates to put up such big numbers so quickly. I think that would give them even more confidence.
Definitely. And in a 10-game competition before you get to finals, you're looking at players and you're looking at a draft going, how many games can that player win me? And if you look across that list when you think that it was Danny Wyatt Hodge, who last season actually really struggled in the WBBL. So for that to be her first outing, the Hurricanes would be really buoyed by that, knowing that Lizelle Lee, who struck back-to-back hundreds last season, was quiet. So they have that buffer. And I think in T20 cricket, when it can be one player that completely takes a game away from you, to know they've got so many match winners in their batting lineup. We haven't even talked about their bowling depth, but their batting lineup, that must make them really optimistic about what this season holds.
That was the power play. Now, before we get to our burning questions for Weber, really looking forward to this. Chinelle Henry, who is a star of the WBBL. We saw her play extremely exciting cricket for the Heat over the course of the weekend. But she is here from Jamaica. She's got a great story to tell, and she sat down and had a chat to Will Taylor.
Firstly, thanks for your time. Really cool to see you playing in the Big Bash. Let's maybe talk about what encouraged you to play in this competition. Why did you want to play Big Bash?
It's one of the major leagues around the world that really supports women's cricket. So obviously to get a chance to, just be here and to play in this competition with some great people is obviously a huge opportunity. And, in the West Indies, we don't really have much of those. So to branch out a bit and to be here and to experience this is something really cool.
Have you watched much of the competition from afar in previous years?
Yeah, I have, because obviously, we've had a few girls in this competition before. So Yeah, I've watched a few last year, especially, you know, it was really good. And obviously the club I'm representing this year, you know, came really close to still winning it. So, you know, it's just about really helping the group as much as I can, and hopefully we can go one step further this year.
You're an athlete of many sports. Let's talk about growing up. So from what I've read, track and field was a real passion of yours.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us about your sporting journey from the start to where you are now.
Growing up, I think we, as children back home, we have a lot of backyard stuff. We have a lot of freedom to do stuff. Especially also in primary school, we have a lot of competitions where you play with boys, because we barely have girls back then who really wants to, like, you know, play sports. So it was really hard to have like an all girls thing. Started track and field in like basic school, actually, like very small. You know, gradually into primary school and then high school. I've been to a few competitions, won a few medals. And then, you know, I was given the opportunity to actually, you know, go to one of the best schools in Jamaica who actually does track. So that was really good on my part. And then also I used to play soccer. I was also given the opportunity to represent Jamaica in soccer. And then, you know, cricket was not really on the agenda. It was just something like my dad used to go about, just enjoy playing on weekends. It was just really interesting, and I think it was just my curiosity, honestly. Like, he would always yell at me, you know, the ball, everything is hard about cricket. The ball, the bat, everything was hard. So a part of me just wanted to, like, maybe it's not so hard, like you're saying it. So, and then I know I got really intrigued and I started doing it. I started playing with the boys in primary school. It was just something fun to do. So it was like track and field, soccer and cricket. So it was like all three. And then I can remember all of them kind of like jam into one big thing, and I had to choose. At 13, I can remember there was this competition back home called the Mini League, and they just wanted girls to play with the boys just to expand the sports. And my coach was like, you could just come, it's something fun. And I can remember the boys was just bowling at me, because obviously I'm a girl, so they was just bowling soft and stuff, and I was just like, y'all could just do it. Like, I'm literally not afraid. Y'all could just do it. And it turned out that I really had a good tournament in that little league. And then the national coach at the time saw me and he was like, I want you to come in for a trial for the cricket team. I remember representing West Indies as just age 18. And then, you know, a really huge setback where I had a really bad injury. And then I was dropped from the team eventually. And then, you know, it took me like probably 3 or 4 years to really get back into playing. I was like, I wouldn't say really like mad at myself, like disappointed, like I chose something that really didn't really want to choose me. And then I was just like, I went back to college, just forget about it, I don't want to play anymore. And then I can remember I was in college and I got a call. This was 2019 to be exact. I got a call and they said, you know, I'm selected to be a part of the West Indies camp. And I'm just like, this doesn't make sense, because I wasn't really like playing. It was just like, I was out, I was over it. Everything was just like, yeah. I got in, and then that was the year I made like a promise to myself, like, if this is something that I'm going to do, then just probably just suck it up and just do what's required.
So that call you got in 2019, would you describe that as almost like a turning point to really take the game to your next level? Yeah,
I would think so, because at that point I wasn't really thinking about cricket, to be honest. It was more about school and just trying to do something else, because at that point I kind of turned down track. I forget about soccer, and then I was focusing on cricket. And then, you know, that 4-year gap was just something huge for me, struggling with injuries, hard to get back into a team. I was a bowler who couldn't bowl because of the back injury I suffered. So then I'm like, really, what's the purpose? Then I really started, you know, maybe I could try batting. And then, you know, it really just kind of started working out. And then I think, like I said, I made that promise to myself in 2019 that this is something that I'm going to make a career out of, because I just refuse to think that playing sports is not something that I'm meant to do, regardless of what sport it is. And I'm like, I'm stuck with cricket, so might as well make the most of it. So yeah, I think 2019 really was kind of a wake-up call, like a turning point, like, you know, you're actually good, so just suck it up and do what's right. So that's when I started getting, like, you know, proper training, started getting my body right, eating habits, stuff like that. And then I actually got my first contract in 2019 for West Indies. So then I was like, yeah, this is really good. And then, things just started looking up after that. And the past 16 or 18 months have been really good to me. And I just wanted to embrace it, being a part of the women's IPL as a replacement player and actually doing, as well as I did. I just like beating odds, if I'm being honest, because obviously when I went there, a lot of people didn't actually expect to see to experience what they saw, and obviously that's also gave me an entry into this competition, because obviously the Heat saw something too and feel like I could bring something to this team. So like I said, it's just about going out there and enjoying it and don't change what I do, and once I do that, then I'm pretty sure I can contribute a lot to this team.
It's a really good sentiment, and obviously there's been some tough times back home recently. How cognizant are you of that, and how much are you trying to represent both Jamaica and the West Indies while you're over here?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the past week or 10 days has been really rough, especially in Jamaica with that massive hurricane, and it's really sad with what's happened to the country, and being here. That could be a good thing for the country, obviously representing Jamaica and obviously the West Indies. It was really hard when obviously I got here, and every time I picked up my phone, I would go on social media. It's just about the disaster. It still is, but it's not as bad as it was probably a week ago. So yeah, it's a really hard one to swallow when I got here, and training and stuff, and the girls would really try to be like, make it fun, just to clear the head and stuff. And obviously I have friends and teammates who've lost a lot in the hurricane. So as I said, it's really sad times, and obviously not much I could do to help them than, a conversation there or whatever it might be, supporting them in whatever ways I can. But to be here and to actually, make something out of this, to be like, yeah, I'm from Jamaica. We just had, a major setback, but, I'm here to stand tall and represent my country, represent the region, and, just make Jamaica proud.
Coming into this tournament, you've talked a fair bit about, being able to be here and what that means to you. But I guess at this stage of your career, how much of it is winning against also being a role model and trying to inspire a next generation? Because I feel like from what you're saying, that's a really big part of why you still play the game, right? Is to really be a really good representation, not just of West Indies or Jamaica, but just for women's cricket in general. Yeah,
as I said, the women's game have grown tremendously, and obviously when I started, I really didn't have this much I would say cricket or whatever it might be to help grow my game, and to actually see where women's cricket is now, and I can be a part of that. Obviously anybody, it might be a female just walking up to me and be like, they want to play cricket. That really gives me just another drive to actually make them proud, just seeing me out there representing women in sports. And I've had a lot of those, been to a lot of schools, been to a lot of stuff, just inspiring young girls and make them see that it's okay to be a part of this generation. Representing women in sports is really good. And like I said, I still have a few more years in me, and if that's, if I can inspire a girl every day I step out on that field, I'm really, really happy with that, because obviously after us, I still want to see women's cricket or women's sport in general continue in that path and continue to be massive.
When this tournament ends, what do you want people to say about Chinelle Henry?
That I'm strong and resilient, and despite whatever is happening back home, I was able to come here, show up, show out, and have a wonderful WBBL.
There you go, Chinelle Henry joining Will Taylor. What's your thoughts on Chinelle? It's a great story, but she's also a very exciting cricketer.
Oh, there's so much to unpack, isn't there? It sounds a bit like cricket found her, not she found cricket.
Yes.
It's such a wonderful journey that she's been on, obviously blessed with athletic talent and sort of finding her way into what made sense for her from a sporting perspective and sport for choice, by the sounds of it. From a cricket perspective, wowee. I think it's been interesting watching her impact for West Indies, but then seeing her roll into what's now the third version of domestic franchise cricket she's played across the world, with absolute gratitude for the opportunity that she's got, that higher purpose of wanting to inspire young girls back in the West Indies, particularly Jamaica. And then seeing her go and do what she did in the first game of the season to really own the opportunity, you can't but be inspired.
I agree with you. It's sort of, you're watching her play, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. And it just kept happening. And it's just like, you want to make a good early impression. You've certainly done that.
There was a shot, Whitey, that she hit that I think it was Deandra Dotton, her countrywoman, and they were having a proper how you going in that surge over. And she hit a flat bat shot down the ground over the top of mid-on off a ball that no other female in the game could actually get to the spot she got it to. And he just went, yeah, right. That's after she'd put a couple in the grandstand and made the most unbelievable sound off her bat. So Grace Harris, actually, I think she was sitting in commentary at the time and she said, there's not many people that I'm physically intimidated by, but I tell you what, she's one of them when we're sitting in the change room together. And I don't think I ever thought I'd hear Grace Harris say that.
I think Millie Illingworth did a good favour to a lot of other bowlers around the competition. It's like, yes, you don't bowl there to her. So I think Millie now knows, and I think everyone else knows. Don't give her width. Do not do that. All right, let's get to our burning questions for Weber, our great friends at Weber. All the trending topics that we saw over the last couple of days, with plenty happening across the WBBL. Let's get straight into it. So I'm going to ask about Annabelle Sutherland, who we are going to have hopefully as one of our guests on the program in the weeks ahead. Just taking on the captaincy and what that means about it's. And I know she's sort of done it before at times and all that sort of thing, but it's this whole thing about owning the competition, owning the Melbourne Stars in a lot of ways, showing us that you are one of the best players in the competition, but also one of the best players in the world.
She's an unbelievable athlete, isn't she? You shouldn't necessarily have a player conversation separate to a leader conversation when you have so many of those attributes already. I think as a cricketer, let's just pause for a minute and recognise she's 24 years old.
Right.
It sounds like we're talking about someone who's 35 and had a 20-year career playing for Australia. She's still chronologically so young, yet when you start looking at her rap sheet, she's got a 200 in a test match against South Africa. She scored an Ashes 100 at the MCG earlier this year. She's a Belinda Clark Award winner. It goes on and on and on and on. She just brought up her 100th WBBL appearance as well just a couple of days ago. So there's so many things to like about her from an ability perspective. I think the leadership piece, obviously last year had an opportunity to do it, not necessarily the ideal circumstances for that to be true for her. So it's been really interesting as someone coming from outside of that bubble, watch her go about her business in terms of how she wanted to prepare for this iteration of WBBL, knowing that that was her role and that was her opportunity. And the complexity obviously sits with the fact that she's been at a World Cup trying to perform there, happens to be the leading wicket taker for Australia at that World Cup as well, whilst she's trying to do the right thing in connecting with her teammates and planning and preparing from a Stars strategy perspective. So much for her to have on her plate, so much to like about her capacity as a leader.
Yeah, and that's the reason it's almost setting a bit of a challenge for Annabelle is that at times it feels like, and I'd love to ask her this question, that she's almost trying too hard, the Stars, because there's almost this, I almost see it on her face, I should be dominating, I should be doing this, I should be doing that because I've done it for Australia. But sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to actually not try too hard and just let it happen. And that's hard when you're the best player and you're the captain to just let it happen, but sometimes you've got to do that.
Well, we're talking about Ash Gardner and Phoebe Litchfield and what leadership has brought out of them. And you look at Annabelle and you think, well, there is all that capacity. And I think she's so diligent with her preparation and how she approaches things. And she's a dot every I, cross every T sort of operator and making sure that no stone is left unturned. And I remember us speaking with Sophie Molyneux last year, and she talked about that balance of how do I prepare myself and not be overly invested in all the things my teammates need and almost caring too much. And you sort of feel with Annabelle that her challenge is going to be, yes, I need to prepare myself as best I can to perform because I am one of the best players in my team and in the country for that matter, whilst also enjoying the opportunity that she's got to lead a team that she's played in for so long from such a young age and cares so deeply about. And also to continue to grow herself because that's so important to her from a leadership perspective. She's wired to improve. She loves the challenge of finding new ways to get better, and leadership will be no different. The only difference with that is that because there's so many humans involved in what that iteration looks like, the challenge is it's less controllable than when you're preparing just for your own performance. So I think one of the challenges there will be many as a leader of a WBBL team when you're doing it for the second time in your career is to strike that balance between getting the best out of herself, getting the best out of her team, but also enjoying the ride.
Yeah, there's a bit of a brother in all of that too with him Will looking after the Victorian team is sometimes you've got to inspire, but you've also got to enjoy as well. And when you're enjoying your cricket and not trying too hard, often you play better and you can still be a great leader. So as I said, I hope we get a chance in the next couple of weeks to ask all of those questions to Annabelle. Be prepared, Annabelle. We've got the questions ready. Talking about captaincy, but this time actually relinquishing the captaincy is Elise Perry. So she's handed it over to Ash, as we've talked about before. I don't know whether it's possible, but it could actually take Elise's game to another level.
Where does that go?
Well, that's right. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure it's possible.
Well, back-to-back over 400-run seasons, isn't it? So you think about how leadership brings good things out of people. I think the consistency of Elise Perry's performances in this competition with a title, without a title, as the captain, not as the captain, I don't think it'll bother her too much. I think ultimately she loves this competition. She's performed so consistently in it. I think what an opportunity for her to ride shotgun with Ash Gardner and hopefully give the Sixers the performances that their list has presented that they should have, that perhaps they haven't had. So I'm not sure what impact that will necessarily have on Elise Perry and what those performances look like. I think inconsequentially because her performances are simply so good in the competition.
Yeah, and they've got other leaders there as well. So it'd be interesting to see how she goes because only because it's different to what it has been, and it's no different to when she's playing for Australia, obviously. But it's just it might see her, if it's possible, get better, which I'm not sure it is. But anyway, Sophie Eccleston joining Amanda Jade Wellington in Adelaide. Spin to win for the Strikers, do you think, as a result of that?
Maybe. I mean, the Strikers have always prided themselves on their diversity of their bowling attack. You think about those back-to-back title-winning years and you've got new ball in the hand of Brown and Shute, and then you've got Amanda Jade Wellington and Gemma Barsby, Anisu Mashongwei. There's so many options that they have what happens with the ball in, away, both lots of turn. So I think having Sophie Eccleston there in conjunction with Amanda Jade Wellington, probably not dissimilar to the deployment we probably saw from the Sixers when Eccleston was alongside Amelia Kerr in a lot of ways. They squeeze in those middle overs. They dominate that period. You've probably got someone in Sophie Eccleston where Talia McGrath could also throw her the ball in some of those surge type overs, less so probably a power play sense given the seam options that they have. So I'm really curious to see what that balance looks like for Talia McGrath and how she chooses to use them. But when you've got, for sure, they both take the ball away from a right-hander, but they serve really different purposes. And I think we've seen the Eccleston-Kerr combination work well for the Sixers. So curious to know what that looks like with Amanda Jade Wellington and Sophie Eccleston, given that Wellington's a slightly different bowler to Amelia Kerr.
It feels they've got a point of difference on a lot of other teams in the competition. We sort of talk more about them from a bowling point of view, whereas a lot of the other teams, it's the strike power. It's the strike power with the batting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, they do have Laura Wolvart, so there's that.
Yeah, of course. But it's more, we think of defence and offence.
Definitely.
With the Strikers, I feel it's more their weapon is actually their defence.
Completely agree. And I think, again, we look back at those title-winning years and when they were the most effective, economical bowling team in the competition, that's actually what won them the title. They backed themselves to win a game from anywhere because they knew they could defend any score.
Yep.
We saw that at the Adelaide Oval against the Brisbane Heat in one of those finals. So they show up in a way where they just almost starve you of runs. And then when you do have a Laura Wolvart, now they've got a Tammy Beaumont in their lineup, they've really bolstered what the top end of that batting lineup looks like as well, in the absence of Katie Mack, who's gone to the Scorchers. So I think from that perspective, they have quite a well-balanced list. We keep having that conversation, don't we, across the competition of how many good lists there are. But you're right, the strength of that lineup is the diversity and discipline of their bowling lineup.
We had Nicole Faltum in here last week. I'm an unashamed Nicole fan. She's one of my favourites. But in all seriousness, how important is she to the Renegades? Because she does play a different role than what she would for Victoria. Usually she's at the top of the order, field up, all that sort of thing, hitting a cover drive through the offside. Whereas she has to be a little bit more versatile in the role she's playing for the Renegades now. She's still got the gloves, but it's a bit different, but she seems to have found a way.
She certainly has. I think it was last year, really. That was her first year when she'd shifted from Stars to Renegades colours. Interestingly, and maybe it speaks to the competitive nature of her personality, that her 2 best innings last season actually were against Stars as well. So do with that what you will.
Yeah.
And I think it was the exposure she got in different scenarios, regardless of where you bat in a lineup, particularly for the Renegades, who pride themselves on that really aggressive brand to stay ahead of the game, to keep the game moving forward, means that regardless of what number you're batting, there will be an opportunity at some stage, sometimes multiple opportunities, where you've got almost that top order role to play. So I think the benefit that the Renegades have in having Nicole Faltum in the spot in the order that she is, knowing that she can float up and down, but technically she's really equipped to play a variety of different roles. And we saw that in the game the other day, 37 on out of 26. She came in and iced the game with with Georgia Wareham. Getting my teams confused. And I think seeing her hook Shabnam Ishmael up onto the hill at the junction absolutely pinged off her bat, but she got into her innings by hitting pockets and reading the situation and identifying that needing 8s and over didn't need to happen in boundary straight away. And we know her to be such a high energy, high vibe kind of person that lights up a room or brings people together in a change room. And she definitely is a leader behind the stumps as well. I think what was really noticeable about her innings the other day was the level of calmness and composure and clarity that she went about that innings with. And I think that's the thing that is probably the development piece in her game. She's got 100 in the WNCL this season under her belt. She's increasingly getting opportunities with Australia A, and all of those things give you confidence in your game. And then one of Simon Helmut's real strengths is the clarity he then provides players with in terms of what their role is in that lineup. So piece all of those things together and you have a player that becomes a really critical part of the machine.
I think it's a great point. I often think of Nicole as it's like she's riding a bike without brakes sometimes when she's batting. She just goes one speed and gets faster and faster and faster. But the way that she controlled that innings in a tricky chase and also the fact because she's so used to batting at the top of the order, the surge becomes really important to hold back for her if she's coming in at 6 or 7. So that's the versatility that we're talking about with Nicole Faltum. The Sydney Thunder batting order. Now, you talked about this before. So currently it's Vol, Wilson, Litchfield, Knight, Adapatu, and then Leroy, and then throw in Harris who kind of floats. I mean, it looks really, really good. But sometimes you can have too many really good players that want to do the same role. Would you go with that as your order, or would you look at potentially being a bit different?
I really like the balance that they have. I think the left-hand, right-hand options that they've got, I think you get the most out of Talia Wilson at the top of the lineup. I think it was 2 seasons ago she had a great year opening, and then last year she slid into the middle order with some slightly different roles. And I think they've gone back to her at the top with Georgia Vol, even though you don't get the left-hand, right-hand combination like you do with the Litchfield and Vol. I think you optimise Wilson's output given she has found some real momentum and form as well, scoring lots of WNCL runs and continuing to increase that strike rate. Litchfield at 3, I also like the look of that because ultimately in T20 cricket, that's as good as opening the batting. Sometimes you can be in there really quickly or it really frees her up. You know she'll play the way that she plays regardless, Phoebe Litchfield. And then you have sort of that composure experience of Knight through the middle, knowing that her strike rate in the surge in particular, I think 184 it was last season, which is deceptively high.
Yeah, very much so.
Whereas Laura Harris last year in the surge struck at 169, but 195 at the death. So what you can see with the Thunder lineup is they're pretty happy to float Laura Harris based on the situation. And then the name, Chamari Adapatu, we haven't even talked about her. And Annika Leroy struck 31 from 21 against the Renegades the other day. So again, if they find themselves in strife, they have her out-and-out power to slide in there as well. So I like how they've set it up. And I mentioned before, I think their roles are quite clear. They just haven't probably all come off on the same day. Lots of 30s, high 20s and 30s type scores. They haven't had one of those key players go on with a big score. So when I say that, I'm talking about Vol, Litchfield, Knight. they're the ones that need to take responsibility for going large and deep and setting the game up so that they optimise the surge, but then set Annika Leroy and Laura Harris up to really back end the innings. So the ingredients are there. I think the other piece to the puzzle is Georgia Voll, having come from an Australian environment where you can pretty much just go, knowing that you're back to 11. What does her tempo look like so she can still play to her strengths in amongst what this Thunder lineup are trying to achieve? So I like it. It just hasn't come off yet.
Yep. Okay, so a bit of a hold on the Sydney Thunder batting order at the moment. Now, before we get to your thoughts, Kirby, on the Hurricanes and whether they might have the top 5 or the best top 5 in the competition, I want to hear from Elise Villani because she knows very much about her own team. This is her thoughts on the batting power there.
In a word, how would you describe your batting lineup this year?
Long.
It's pretty stacked, isn't it?
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. I feel like we've got great balance. We've got a really long batting lineup. I feel like it allows people to go out there, play with freedom. It won't be, someone's day every day, but it's going to be spread around. It was Danny tonight. It was Nick tonight. I have no doubt that they can continue to perform for us, but I also know there's heaps of other people in the lineup as well where their opportunity will also come.
Elise Villani there talking about the Hurricanes batting lineup. It is long, and there's also lots of long names too, hyphenated names. It's hard to get them all out, but you talked about it before. It's just chock full of international talent.
Wild, isn't it? When you start looking at the names and you start thinking about how good they are and what they've contributed to the game, and you have to say a couple of names before you get to Elise Villani, and she's one of the greats of our she's played many games for Australia and now one of the greats in our domestic setup as well, captaining Tassie and the Hurricanes. So Lizelle Lee, ex-international, now local player, and you use that in inverted commas, don't you? Danny Wyatt-Hodge, Nat Sciver-Brunt, Nicola Carey, Heather Graham, Elise Villani, Rachel Treneman, and the list just goes on and on. So the short answer to the question is, do they have the best batting lineup? There's no way you can say no.
And they proved it with the way that they played the other day. And it's one of those things that I reckon you're going to see a lot through this competition. They'll keep batting second if they can because they'll kind of feel like you can get as many as you like. We'll get more.
Yeah, you can run anything down, can't you? When you've got a record breakers left, right and centre, really. That I still come back to those 2 innings that Lizelle Lee put together back-to-back, those enormous hundreds. That's my soul to say. She struck 180 in WNCL against the Vicks this season as well. So she's coming in red-hot form, and you then just free up a Graham, a Carey, a Treneman, a Villani to play with the absolute freedom and really take the game on, knowing that you essentially are saying to Lizelle Lee, Danny Wyatt-Hodge and Nat Sciver-Brunt, hey, you go large and we'll play our role around that. And the cricket smarts that sit with a Carey, a Graham, a Villani and a Treneman mean that they'll read the room perfectly, and either they have the capacity to go big if the others don't, or play like Nick Carey did the other night, 58 not out of 43, finished the game off. Wonderful partnership with Danny Wyatt-Hodge and a really mature innings from her. And I wouldn't be surprised if she's got a lot of 40 and 50 not outs across the duration of this season, Nick Carey.
Absolutely. All right, that pretty much does it for this episode of The Surge. Those burning questions, of course, brought to you by Weber. A bit of housekeeping. Don't forget you can still win $1,000 a week with the BKT Big Bash tipping competition, as well as $15,000 overall prize. Download the Big Bash app to get involved. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to download the Big Bash app to get all of the information, not only The Surge, but any information that's coming up, tickets, when games are on, all that sort of thing, all the news. That's where you go to get the Big Bash app. That's it for us for the day. It's great to have you back. Multiple captain winning WBBL champion, captain, leader, but also in your role at Cricket Victoria. But it's great to still have you part of The Surge this year.
Likewise, Whitey. Good to be here and look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Kirby Shaw joining us on The Surge. We'll catch you next time.